Okay, so I decided to get a couple of these knockoffs so I could take a look at them and analyze them, tear them apart, tell you what I think. The reason I picked these two because number one, this is the one I really wanted, and I picked this because I've been waiting for things to get to this level where basically first, you notice when things first came out, the knockoffs were really expensive and the quality wasn't all that great. Then year after year, that would change with competition, prices go down, the knockoffs get better and better. I've noticed they're now using brass contacts and stainless steel pins, so you know, if they're using higher quality on the small parts, overall I would assume that the whole thing's pretty good. I got one of these because I wanted to show all these what I perceive to be pretty stupid ideas in the design of things like these stigmas and the dragonflies. Plus it was only 15 bucks, so I can throw that out for the video. First thing I did, of course, is take these things apart when I got them. This particular Bishop knockoff, I noticed, is kind of like in between the second and third gen. There's no screws on the back, only two on the bottom, but then the front face is not removable, so it's somewhere in between the second and third as far as the knockoff design. You remove the two bottoms, pull the motor out, the slide comes out, so you have one, and if you notice, the size of the motor is pretty decent, hefty size versus the Dragonfly Stigma type motors. In comparison, they're pretty small. Runs on a single bearing cam offset there, and I measured the stroke out to be about 3.5 to 4. I would say 3.5 running. I'll show you where I got that measurement in a minute. First thing I did notice, it's kind of like a firearm. The lower cost firearms don't have all the finish work, whereas it's kind of like a trigger group or a slide on a handgun where every your metal to metal parts are at. You want to have all that surface as smooth as glass as possible. So I took a simple small driller file and I worked out all the angles, each lip, edge, and bottom surface so that everything was glass smooth, cleaned it out, and then you want to use something like a lithium or Teflon type grease. What I have on here is a combination of certain things that I use on firearms, but the lithium grease is basically what they suggest. If you want to mix it up, that's fine. Just don't use anything like WD-40 and petroleum type greases because they will swell and crack and fuck up your plastic pieces. So again, after I did all that, well, that was about the only thing that I noticed that needed to be done. So grease that back up and put it back together. What I like about this more so, because what I was worried about is, you know, something that's going to be really light and flimsy and cheap looking, but it's not. Like I said, it's got a nice hefty motor on it. Even the small parts are decent, you know, quality as far as the hardware they're putting them together with. I haven't found anything other than that, and that probably wasn't super needed, but just so for my own conscience, knowing everything is smoothed out. That's really the only thing I needed to do to that. With this is a bit trickier because it comes with these 3 cams and each one has a slightly greater stroke to it. I'm not sure what the point to changing the stroke out on these are. With the coils, the whole point to changing the stroke was to change the speed of the machine. These rotaries, you change the speed with the power supply. And it came with, so you have a nut down here you loosen to remove these pins. These pins come out of the bottom. These pins, these legs go up inside the bottom here. and they have these two big springs on them. Once you pull those out, I'm kind of apprehensive about doing it because it's kind of tedious. I'll show you just so you can see how tedious this is. Okay, so you pull those out. Alright, so now you want to swap this out. The number 1 stroke lobe on that thing was so damn short it really didn't do anything. Put the number 3 in, and that thing was like gigantic. That's probably like 4.5, 5, like almost like too long. And the problem is, again, it comes down to these stupid legs with these 2 springs. If you notice, the pins, they're not perfectly straight. Okay, so this wants to travel down, but the legs are at an angle, so the farther this thing travels down, the more tension there is. Plus there's 2 springs of tension, so the longest stroke on there it won't even run. This thing won't even run on that. It barely runs on the second longest one. So I put in the second longest one. You get that out. There's a Allen nut right there. You remove that, and then you can pull this out, and then this will come out. So it's a bit tedious to change these things. I would just put in the number 2 cam, and you want to get it lined up like this because these are going to come up inside here. So you got to make sure that this isn't right on top of the hole, but it still has to have enough room to fit in there. Like I said, this whole design is kind of freaking retarded to me. Also, this doesn't actually do anything. It's just a cap that's plugged in there. You need to take a tool to go in there and turn this out, and even then it's kind of pointless because the spring is on top. It has nothing to do with your hit at all. It's not going to change shit. Plus this is so stiff, you're never going to have enough resistance with the needle to matter with that. That's not going to do anything. So that whole design is fucking retarded. Everything about this fucking design is retarded to me. This lobe here, how it's off center, to me all it's going to do is the vibrating from the shaking is going to put a lot of stress on the shaft of the motor and just vibrate it, and eventually it's going to help wear it out faster. If you noticed on this one, I already tightened it, but it didn't have that. It didn't work that way. The way these work is this center pin coming out of the shaft and this lobe are slightly, let me show you, they're offset. Okay, you'll see how this is lower than that shaft, and that's what creates the up and down the stroke. Okay, so there's no need for this off center thing here. I'm sure the idea was that it helps throw it up and down, but really all it does is vibrate the shaft and probably wear out your damn motor more. And it's a small motor to begin with. To get this back together, once you change that part out, again you'll see the bend in there. The long part goes up, and then you'll need to feed the spring onto it. Okay, get that up in there, and because it's bent, it's fucking tricky. So once you get that in there, just snug it a little bit. I'm going to make another adjustment as I get to that. So I just pop these in there. Easier said than done. Again, the leg, because of how it bends forward, see how it's kind of pushing it, making this go at an angle. So what I did the first time I did this is I'll just loosen these just a tiny bit so that the leg can turn, and then I'm gonna hook it up so that it'll basically work itself into the best position. Put my finger down here to make sure the pins don't come out. This one needs to be turned around, I think. There we go. So as you can see, gotta play with it, which, you know, it's kind of bullshit to have to go through all this shit. I don't know if the original, if this is just a problem with the knockoffs, or if the originals have this issue. So I'm going to turn this around. I'm just doing this real time so you can see how much bullshit you gotta go through to okay. Alright, so I gotta adjust it to where it will start now. Still think I can adjust this leg a little bit more, get it to run a little bit smoother. But as you can see, there's a lot of tweaking involved to get this designed to run optimal. Even with the medium stroke, I'd say this is probably a 4mm. This one is at 3.5. I measured that out by doing this. There we go. That's better. Nice firm hit. Like I said, this is much smoother, stronger. There's nothing to adjust, no bullshit going on. This cost me, like, I've seen these last night going for about 20 bucks. I got this for like 26, just so that I didn't have to play around with bids. But they have the brass contacts and the steel front spring. You'll see some that have plastic bodies, some that have some mystery metal contacts in the back and hollow black pins in the front. May use the same metal, and the overall everything could be the same for all I know. But yeah, these are way better than the dragonflies and the stigmas that have all these crazy freaking bullshit going on. And yeah, if you've paid under $100 or less for these, trust me, I don't care what box you got, whatever, it's a knockoff. Don't bother trying to fool yourself. It's the same thing I got for 15 bucks. But there are tons of them out there now, and they're all getting better quality. But as far as the design is what I would go after, and I would go for strength and simplicity over all this fucking garbage that doesn't work and is a pain in the ass. I'm going to go ahead and try them both out and see how they work as far as the size mags they'll work with. I don't see any problem with this handling very, very large mags. I did use it a little bit, and I can tell you that liners and cutback shade style, if you work with those, this would be no problem. I would say you're probably going to have to turn it down to a pretty low speed and use a faster hand movement to do your shading color work. Basically, you just got to tweak your technique a little bit from what you're used to using coils, that's all. And that makes common sense. I mean, it's a different machine. If you don't have adjustments on it like you do with coil, then you're going to have to just tweak your technique yourself. I ran this at about 7, which is what I would normally run it at anyway, but again, voltage on a rotary and a coil are completely different. The fact that they came out to be the same that I normally use is just a coincidence. The really cheap rotaries, they have smaller motors or have plastic bodies that, you know, like those fake Neo, first gen Neotats that run like a bat out of hell on 4 volts. Some people may think that if a motor runs faster on lower voltage, it should be a better motor than something that needs more voltage to run at the same speed. The reason that's not true is because a larger motor, this will run at a certain speed at 7 volts versus a cheap small toy motor will run like a bat out of hell at 4 volts. And that's because of the amount of wire in the motor, which creates resistance. So actually more volts are required to run a stronger motor. And that's how that works. I'll go ahead and do a separate video and find some subjects, do some work, tell you what I think, and show something. But that's what I think about the rotaries at this point. I would go with strong and simple over a pain in the ass and confusing. And don't lose all these fucking parts when you take them apart, because you'll never get them back together. And again, after I get it all back put together, some Teflon. Again, use Teflon or lithium when using plastics. Alright, that's it.